Don't listen to national media. Well, hi there. My name is Charles Ray Dawson. I'm the Associate Broker Residential Sales Manager of ProStar Realty. This is the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast, episode 260. Hope everybody's having a good day. So, yeah, exactly. Just like the song intro said, don't listen to national media. We're going to, that's going to be like the theme of today, and we're going to be touching bases on that. Hope everybody's having a good week. No, that was not a Scott Adams simultaneous sip there. Actually listened to his funeral service over the weekend, which they live streamed and whatnot, and had a lot of people on there that I didn't know he knew well enough to come speak at his funeral. He had a guy by the name of Naval Revant, who, if you know, you know, gave a really fascinating soliloquy on him. Couple other people, couple other comic writers, it gives you a thought, that my birthday was yesterday, the 28th. And so this was the weekend before. And I've mentioned before, this is the month of suck for me personally. So, but I'm not this month. Okay. But, most of the time it's like New Year's start, you start doing your, you do your year-end review. If you're a good agent, you do a year-end review, beat yourself up for everything you were supposed to do that you didn't do. Start planning for next year, sort of in the back of your mind, am I really going to do this, or am I just going through the motions? And then, you get your W-2 from the brokerage, or 1099 in our case, and it's like, hey, this is how much you made, and then you that second hit right there, and then for me, I got my birthday at the end of the month, so just like I said, it's the month of suckage. So, but I hit my goals for last year, exceeded them actually, which means I need to double down and exceed them more this year. And then I'm sitting there watching this Scott Adams thing, and they're talking. I'm like, wow. You start having that question. It's like, what would people say at my funeral? I've mentioned many times, if you do not hear a choir singing Jerusalem, I will personally hunt every Celtica member still alive, even though I'm going to outlive all of them, because that's who I am. So we'll probably have to Muzak it in or something. But I would like people to come up and say nice things about me at my funeral, maybe even play a couple best of, Ray's Rants on Podcasts lists, just throwing ideas out there for people. And not meaning this to be depressive or anything like that, but, as you go through life, you start thinking, hey, this is my journey. This is what I've been doing. You can sit there and dwell of woulda, shoulda, couldas. Man, if I just taken that huge check that I'd got from, being over at Desert Storm when you couldn't spend money on anything, and if I'd put that into something, maybe something Apple-y in 91, maybe a couple other opportunities that I saw that I didn't move on, or you can just sit there and say, yeah, but then I wouldn't be here, and I'm happy with where I'm at. And I hope you're happy too. Although I do have to second guess your choices if you're sitting there on whatever day or night this is and you're wasting your time watching me, but I like to think I'm one of the more entertaining people in your life. I am, right? Please? I could be ever more entertaining. I can sing again. So, but yeah, national news. Okay, Case-Shiller report came in, and remember the Case-Shiller report is always late. All right, the current Case-Shiller report tracked everything from September to November, and then of course we get it at the end of January, so it's how many months behind? All right, and the average of whatever the Case-Shiller would say this is what life was back in October. Right, but it did show that Phoenix was in a positive motion. I want to say it was like 1.1%, meaning our houses are getting, growing in value, which means, actually, I don't think 1.1% beats inflation, but at least we're not sucking like the rest of the country. And of course, every time these reports come out, that's all you hear is the rest of the country. So I wake up this morning going, oh, well, listings or pending offers pending offers being canceled are at a 10-year high. That gets your attention, right? Especially because I'm listing heavy right now. But then you look at it and go, oh, for the rest of the country. Not necessarily for Phoenix, right? Phoenix, we're picking up pretty well, right? So if you're planning on buying in the Phoenix area, now's the time to do it, all right? If you're planning on selling, last month was the time to do it. Keep going. Get a Ray Dawson sign out in front of your house, all right? Because we're in the hot spot. And let's hit the numbers real quick, and I'll explain this to you, all right? So, on our numbers, actives this week are 24,002, up 404 from last week. Now, the week before, last week, we had been up 600, so we're starting to see the new listings coming on. As you can see right here, okay? We're 2,675 new listings, which is down 11. Most of the people who wanted to sell their house this spring are getting it on the market now. All right? Our contracts are 2,539, up 231. There's our buyers. All right? But our closings are still reflecting 1,075. That's because those contracts were written right around Christmas of last year. All right? And coming soon to an MLS near you is 809 new listings. All right? Our supply right now is at 94.1. We're almost where we should be. All right. And our demand is at 83.5, ticking up just a little bit, but we got more supply than we got demand. So we actually dropped a little bit on the balance on our Cromford number to 88.7. Damn, I thought we were going to break 90 this week. All right. So let's look at our regional areas. We still have Fountain Hills leading the pack at 168, although they are down 14% from last month. All right. Chandler's also dropping, but they're at 153. Gilbert's up. And Phoenix are up at 145 and 137 respectively. Scottsdale, Mesa, Glendale, Tempe, Cave Creek. These are all your sellers markets right now. Notice these are also tend to be a little bit on the higher price side compared to our bargain discount pile. Right. Meanwhile, we have Peoria, Avondale, Paradise Valley, all being imbalanced. Right. And then there's a big jump of only over 20 points where we get into what our buyer's market, which are Goodyear, Santan Valley, Surprise, Queen Creek, Buckeye, and Maricopa. So Maricopa, look at that, 5% up. They tend to be trending up. Buckeye, even the show that's showing is 0, it's still a very slight drop, so it's still considered dropping. Queen Creek, but Surprise and Santan Valley are both gaining. Okay, so, and then there's Goodyear. Goodyear dropped too. So, what's going on? People in Cave Creek, why are we down? Fountain Hills, Chandler, why are we down? Scottsdale, why are we down? And why is Gilbert and Phoenix picking up and stuff like that? This sees a impact on higher, the higher price ranges and whatnot. So, they were very lot of activity. Now, not so much. But remember, they're still in positive on the seller side. So, that's where we're at going into this year. Everything that I'm reading saying that we're going to have a good 2026. We're seeing Phoenix starting to pick up. All right, the Phoenix area. Okay, even Case Schiller is saying that it started picking up in October. All right, and then the Fed comes in, and they don't do any changes. All right, I'm not expecting a change out of this current Fed. We have a growing economy. Some people are expecting us to hit the 5s. There's no reason to throw more gas on the fire. Okay, I would like to see it. So would a lot of other people like to see it. We are still waiting to see what happens with the tariffs, right? Because that will have an impact. Okay, that's going to be a huge thing. We have one more government shutdown kicking off this weekend because Lord knows these guys do not like to, pass a bill unless everybody gets their little cut of pork out of it. This particular one seems to be that, last I heard, Chuck Schumer is holding the whole thing up because he doesn't want to fund the Homeland Defense Department. Right? A whole bunch of other things got passed. So when you hear about a government shutdown, remember, it's just aspects of the government, not the whole thing. All right? NORAD's still going to be there. Treasury's still going to be there. A lot of people are going to use this as an excuse to not do anything. We apparently had this huge nationwide walkout that I don't think anybody noticed because the only people who walked out were college students. All right. Well, college student, the unemployed, and government employees. Okay, so it's like if they decide to walk out, nobody really notices. So, I mean, it's not like you're suddenly driving up to Burger King and you're not getting your burgers. You're going to the grocery store and the grocery's not there. It's not like the utility companies are sitting there on the way out. Okay, we're walking out today, and they hit the big switch on the way out the door until they come back the next day. Life goes on. And I'm really starting to wonder if some of these walkouts and these little shutdowns and stuff like that aren't really letting the rest of America know, do we really need these people? Right? My life goes on pretty well. Now, FDA shuts down, and 6 months from now, we're all dying of food poisoning. Now we suddenly found out what the FDA was there for. So that's not going to impact real estate that much. We might have a little bit, once again, we're going to have a hard time getting numbers from the government that they use to plot things like GDP, this, that, and the other thing. They always seem to use an excuse. We didn't get our homework assignment in for 3.5 months late because we were shut down for 24 hours. So that being said, wonderful podcast I listened to this weekend. I finally got my YouTube channel curated where I'm getting rid of the fluff. All right. And as soon as you start listening to podcasts that are actually interviewing like the Secretary of the Treasury, all right, these guys, Secretary of Interior, that was a good one. These people, and we're not talking like a CNN hit piece. We're talking, it's nice seeing somebody who can talk for 2.5 hours about the department that they're in charge of and answer in non-soundbite quips. So there was one of these guys, and he was actually a founder of Airbnb, and he was on one of these channels, and he got wrapped up in the whole Doge thing. Right? He happened to be in DC at the time. Elon called him up and said, "Hey, dude, you want a project for the weekend?" He's like, "Yeah, what we got?" And he got put in charge through Doge of the federal retirement system. This is a system that if you're a federal employee and you've did your time and you're ready for your pension and you file your paperwork to retire, right? And you might have heard about the big mine shaft, okay, that all the federal documents for retirees were in the bottom of an old salt mine called Iron Mountain. It was run by a company called Iron Mountain. Possibly the same people that you see trucks driving around because they secure stuff for businesses. And it was accessed by an old elevator, and they could only process so many files a day because they couldn't physically move the files into the elevator, pull them off the shelf, put them on the cart, roll them out of the elevator, put them in the elevator, send them up, okay, where somebody would pull them off the cart. Okay, and they probably had 5 employees to do this. They had got the one employee, pulls it off the shelf, puts it in a little pile. You got another employee that comes by with the cart, puts it on the cart. He pushes the cart over to the bottom of the elevator where another employee, takes a box of these files and then puts them all in the elevator. And then the elevator goes up where there's another employee who takes everything out and they put that down. And then there's somebody who has to go through the box, all right, where all these files are bundled up and then go, okay, this one needs to go to Kansas City. This one needs to go over here because everything needs to be moved all over the place. So, and what he did, and this is like a master class. If you ever wind up in charge of a situation like this, you bring in all your players, and they call them shareholders now, or stockholders or whatever. And they bring all these people in and they send them down and go, what is it exactly that you do here? And they whiteboarded John Smith, employee, Department of Interior, Bureau of Land Management, and they walked them all the way through John Smith's retirement process from beginning to end. He wakes up that morning and goes, today's the day I start my paperwork. And then he fills out his form, and then he does this, and he sends it off to whatever organization this is, and this and that and the other thing. And in a 2-hour process, they walked through the entire thing, right, including moving files off of, or really understanding the process. Deep dive on that. At the end of the 2 hours, They looked at all of these people who are involved in this, and they said, what happens if the file was digital? If John Smith went onto the government website and filled out a form starting the process instead of however it is. All right. Apparently some places already had digital files. Some places still had paper files, but they got multiple answers. All right. Including 12 months. It would take us 12 months to, if it was all digitally. So they went, okay. And then the next week, they said, we're going to go through the process and we're going to look for the bottlenecks. All right. And they're going to go through the bottlenecks. And what they mean is that they're going to hand walk the file from point to point to point to point. All right. And we're going to see where the holdups are. All right. And they walked the process through. All right. Up into including going down the elevator, getting the file, following the file all the way through. With the concept of if it's hung up in any place, all right, we want to know why. And they would literally go to the employee, Gladys, sitting there in that department, and go, Gladys, you got this file in your hand. What's going on with it? Not saying we're doing a speed test or anything like that. Just, Gladys, what's going on with this file? And Gladys would report back, oh, I need this form from this department over here, or I need this. Or in some cases, that's number 37 on my pile of 40. All right. And by going through and looking at all the bottlenecks and stuff, how many days do you think that it took them to hand process that? They did it in 4 days. The digital copy that they ran concurrently, I should have mentioned this, that they did one by paper and they did one digitally where they were literally emailing, marking up and emailing files back and forth. Pretty much every person who uses Teams understands that Microsoft is really good. You can literally send documents, go, okay, it's your document now, and you do your little touch. 4 days. I don't know if the 8-month average for a person applying to retire and actually getting their pension started was correct or accurate. I'm pretty sure that's probably the worst case scenario, but they reduced the concept to 4 days. All right. What do? Well, at the bottom of the big mine shaft, what they did is they put a freaking scanner. So instead of taking that paper file and walking a happy ass over to and pulling it off the shelf and putting it in, the box. All right. That box got picked up, walked over to a 20-year-old with a scanner who scanned it. I was literally doing this back in 1996. I was in charge of the file room department. Okay. We were just getting into scanning. We were scanning files. All right. And getting that. And here we are at 2026 and the federal government still hasn't figured that out. What's the meaning of this rant? Okay. Is we have efficiencies coming down line. Right. Earlier this week, one of these big real estate brokerages came up with the AI real estate agent. Right. 2 different aspects of this, right? The first one is it's basically a chatbot. Hi, I want to buy a house. Where do I start? That would a great question. Buying a house is an in-depth process, but it's really easy with the right guidance, and I'm here to help. The first thing you need to do, blah, 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 blah. So my broker saw that article, and he's like, well, how are we going to deal with this? And I'm saying, okay, well, we figure out what AI can't do. All right, and we lean into what we can do that AI can't do. Okay, you know what I can do that AI can't? I can care about you as a human being. AI can't do that. Right. Other thing that AI, other thing is that if your AI is run by a, multinational mega corporation, all right, they are definitely not caring about you as a human being. And there's no way in hell they're going to try to program an AI, all right, that will sit there and go, well, Johnny, you have quite an interesting life. And looking at your current situation, I don't think you should buy a house right now. I think you'd be better off to rent. And these are my reasons why. Big corp AI will never, ever tell you that. Never. Ray will, despite it pisses off my wife and my broker, right? Because they don't like, and I say these to clients all the time. Okay, just so you know, I'm talking myself out of a commission, but I don't think you should buy a house. Or I don't think you should sell this house. I think you should do this instead. All right. AI is never going to do that. So what's my magic weapon against the evil AI overlords? Compassion. And they will never be able to pull that one off. So as you sit there in your particular industry, okay, and you suddenly find out that you're retraining your replacement. 20 years ago, we were having to write down everything that we did so they could look for efficiencies. And what they were really doing is trying to document your job so they could outsource this to India. As you sit there training your AI replacement and making your job better, remember, your personal strengths is your humanity. And that works pretty good across the board. All right, repeat that after me. Say it out loud. All right. Your personal strength is your humanity. Try to exercise it more, like any other strength that has to be exercised. This is the kind of thing you have to remind yourself to do every day. All right. Be freaking human to each other. And watch children and pets around water. And don't drive into anything flooded. And work your circles, okay? The humanity aspect of working your circles is like your second and third circle out. All right? Yeah, when you're dealing with your fifth circle and stuff like that, humanity is good, but you should be using it as a filter when you're taking in on the information that they're sending you. All right? Trying to program you to get you upset about things. All right? And have a great weekend, guys. This went in a really weird position. I wasn't really planning on going there, but here we are. Talk to you guys later.